making pro and con lists in his head. When his phone had buzzed with an incoming call from his mother, Alex had almost ignored it, not wanting to admit failure on two fronts to the woman who only ever wanted to see him happy. But he'd answered anyway, and listened to her chat about the weather, the latest football game that had backed up traffic all the way to her house, a new store that had opened across the street from Helen and Jerry's Java. As he listened, he'd calmed thinking about the Ann Arbor autumn, about the way the days were warm but the nights turned cold as soon as the sun's heat had burned away, the way downtown smelled like coffee and waffle cones and turning leaves and moss, the way the U of M fight song blasted from car horns and house windows and cell phone ringtones during football season and got stuck in your head even if you weren't a football fan. When his mom had told him that, lately, the arthritis in her hands had gotten so bad she could no longer even make the coffee drinks at Helen and Jerry's Java, the cafe she and his father had opened his senior year in high school, and which his mother had run alone since his father died 10 years ago, and that she wished she could take a vacation, drive up north with her new beau, her term. Alex's head had gotten fuzzy, and then it had gotten very, very clear. "Mom," he'd said softly, "I think I'm coming home." And now here he was. He'd shipped his belongings, surprised but not upset to find that he didn't own much he cared enough to hold on to. He'd given Drustica his notice, and he'd booked a flight. When he touched down in Detroit, it hadn't felt like moving. It had felt like visiting, as he'd done dozens of times before. He'd had one small duffel bag and his laptop, as if he were coming in for a long weekend like he always did. The taxi had dropped him off in his mother's driveway, just like it always did, and his mother had come out to meet him, just like she always did. She told him he looked so handsome, just like she always did, and he'd seen the moment her eyes moistened, thinking about how she wished his father were here, just like he always did. It was just the same, only everything was different. Because this time, when his mother settled him at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a cup of decaf for herself, she didn't say, "So, tell me everything," like she always did. This time she said, "So, here's the plan." Now, after weeks of work, the bakery that had existed in his head for years, in gradually shifting menu concepts, color combinations, and layouts, was finally a reality. Helen and Jerry's Java was now, and Son. Gareth had thought it was a ridiculous name. Alex's mother had cried. Alex could say now, armed with knowledge of the restaurant industry and professional baking training, that Helen and Jerry's Java had not been a good coffee shop. The layout had been bad, the coffee mediocre, and the pastries, well, the less said about them, the better. Alex had completely transformed it. His mother's employees had jumped at the chance to log extra hours painting, cleaning, rearranging, and running endless errands. It had been pure luck that Mira, one of the baristas who'd worked there for a few years, had announced that she'd worked construction for her father all throughout high school. Alex had paid her to build out the counter and add a bench along the perimeter of the cafe. While they'd worked behind paper-taped windows, Alex had spent his time sourcing ingredients, setting up deliveries, and designing his menu. The best bakeries had a cohesive vision. You didn't want a counter selling bran muffins next to key lime tarts, next to baklava, next to polvorones. The menu needed to have range but not feel chaotic, provide surprises but not overwhelm. For each recipe he added to the mental menu in his mind, Alex had shifted another one off. When he'd realized he needed a lemon glaze on this one or cayenne in that one, it sparked to life another avenue of flavors. He'd felt like a kid, sitting cross-legged on the heavy steel prep table.